Jethro Tull, Stand Up, the moment everything changed. Every band has a moment where they stop sounding like their influences and start sounding like themselves. For Jethro Tull, that moment is Stand Up. It's 1969, the British blues boom is fading, folk rock is rising, and progressive rock hasn't quite found its name yet. The band has just lost Mick Abrahams, the blues purist whose guitar defined their debut, This Was. And suddenly Ian Anderson is standing at a crossroads. His choices? Follow the blues or build something entirely new. He chooses the second path, and Stand Up is the sound of that decision. I was 10 years old when the album came out. My brother was 15 and he played Stand Up on a small plastic battery-powered record player over and over until the thing buzzed like it was about to melt. I didn't understand the album then, not fully, but I felt it. The energy, the strangeness, and the sense that something was shifting. And part of that shift came from a new face, Martin Barre. His audition was famously tense. Anderson later said he looked terrified, but once he settled in, something clicked. Barre wasn't a blues purist like Abrahams. His playing was sharper, more architectural, more willing to bend into folk, jazz, or classical shapes. You can already hear the beginnings of the guitarist who would define Tull's sound for the next 4 decades. Stand Up is the moment his voice enters the story. But while Barre was finding his footing, another player stepped forward. That was Cornick. His bass on this album isn't just supportive, it's present, melodic, and mixed surprisingly high for a 1969 rock record. Cornick fills the spaces left by the band's shift away from blues, weaving counterlines and rhythmic ideas that give the album its restless energy. Listening now, with better playback and older ears tuned to the low-mid richness of a mix, his contribution feels even more essential. And then there's Clive Bunker, the wild card. His drumming on Stand Up is loose, explosive, and full of personality. Before Tull tightened into the precision of the early 70s, Bunker gave the band a raw, unpredictable edge. He doesn't just keep time, he pushes the music, adding sudden accents, rolling fills, and bursts of energy that make the album feel alive. This is the only era where Tull sounds almost feral, and Bunker is a huge part of that. The album doesn't ease into anything, it leaps. Decoding the track highlights, we begin with A New Day Yesterday. This is a heavy blues-rooted opener that still carries the grit of This Was, but with a new edge. Barre's guitar and Anderson's phrasing already hint at the band pulling away from pure blues. It's the last doorway to the old sound before the album steps into something new. Jeffrey Goes to Leicester Square. This is a whimsical, folk-tinged piece that introduces Anderson's eccentric storytelling voice. The arrangement is lighter, more playful, and it marks the first real break from the band's blues origins. A small song with big implications. Bourree, a bold reimagining of Bach's Bourree in E minor, turned into a jazz rock showcase for flute and bass. Anderson's playing is confident and mischievous. Cornick is magnificent, and Barre's subtle guitar work keeps it grounded. It's the moment the band declares they're not following anyone's rules anymore. Then we have Back to the Family, which is a restless autobiographical track that swings between quiet reflection and sudden bursts of energy. Barre adds tension, Cornick dances underneath, and Bunker's drumming is wonderfully unrestrained. It's one of the album's most emotionally revealing moments. Moving on, Nothing Is Easy. This is a tight, energetic rocker that became a live staple for good reason. Barre's guitar is fierce, Cornick is on fire, and Bunker drives the track with real urgency. It's the band sounding fully locked in for the first time. Definitely a favorite of mine. And now for the last decode on this video. We Used to Know. This is a melancholic, beautifully structured song built on a descending chord progression that later drew comparisons to Hotel California. The Eagles toured with Tull in the early 70s, so it's entirely possible the progression seeped in subconsciously. Anderson has never made a fuss about it. He simply calls it one of those musical echoes that happen when bands share stages. Barre's solo here is one of his first truly expressive moments on record. And of course, there are a few tracks I'm not decoding here. Not because they are unimportant, but because Stand Up is an album that rewards discovery. Some songs reveal themselves slowly, some spark debate, and some deserve their own conversation entirely. Maybe that's a video for another day. Before we close, it's worth mentioning the album cover, the famous woodcut style pop-up sleeve. It wasn't just a gimmick, it visually captured the band standing up into a new identity, stepping out of the blues and into something stranger, bolder, and unmistakably their own. Stand Up isn't just a second album, it's a reinvention, a declaration, the moment Jethro Tull stepped out of the blues and into their own voice. More than 50 years later, it still feels fresh, still feels hungry, still feels like the spark that lit everything that came after. So where does Stand Up sit for you? The first great Tull album, or the first true Tull album? If you're enjoying these dives into the vault, consider subscribing. A new album every week. Next time on the Collection Vault, we continue the Origins trilogy with Benefit, the album where Jethro Tull sharpened their sound and stepped closer to the masterpiece waiting just around the corner. Stay tuned.